Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Lange, and I'm going to do additional PD on the all block and an overview. This video is to be used with the March LF meeting slides, starting with slide 50. You can use this as a personal reference tool or to follow along within your own PLCs. Therefore, if you are using your own PLC or pacing yourself with this, please stop and play to meet your needs. You will need the handouts that are attached to the slides or access to them. And you will also need your Module 1 teacher guide. At the back of the Module 1 teacher guide for grade 3, there is an appendix. We will be referencing this appendix throughout the presentation. Linda Rhine has created an amazing and excellent all block video, which she captures the basics of all block and its structures. She delves in a little bit deeper and she talks about the catch and release model visually so that when you are planning all block, you understand how the teacher group and the independent group play with one another. There are 5 all block components, and in this slide, you can see the relationship between an all block component and how they fit with a module lesson. In all block, there are 5 components. Each component has an icon. These icons match in the student book as well as the teacher guides. If you are having issues launching your all block, it's suggested that you go back and revisit the first 4 weeks of all block, set the stage for teachers and students. These are the lessons that put the structures in place for success. Also within the appendix, EL gives teachers a resource in which to model and to take time to really have these structures in place so that teachers can pull independent groups. Independent tasks happen each and every day in all block. Students must be trained to follow this protocol so that the teacher can have a teacher-guided group. As students are asked to work in one of the 5 components of all blocks, the tasks will vary, but laying this foundation of expectations will be key. You'll notice some of the demands here. They must find a group, they must allocate a facilitator and timekeeper, and they must manage their work independently. Independent reading happens each and every day. EL commits an entire chapter to the importance of reading in the appendix. You can find this research on page 553 of the appendix. You'll notice in independent reading, there is often a specific or topic-related text reading, and then choice reading in the second week of the unit. You will also notice that each week gradually releases to more of a social interaction in independent reading. EL says the purpose for this is social interactions energize independent reading. This is the principle behind book clubs for adults, and it is equally true, if not more so, for young readers. If possible, have students select independent reading books in pairs or trios so that they can talk about their books with one another. EL also stresses the importance of students needing accountability for their reading, both on a weekly basis and when they finish a book. This accountability comes from reading logs as well as from conversations with teachers and peers about what they are reading. For coaching support and conferring support, look at page 544 of the appendix on how to confer with your readers. There are also sample plans on page 533 on how to launch some of these routines. And an unrecognized and embedded component of EL, all block, are language dives. All students participate as a whole group in a language dive at least twice a week in the main body of module lessons or a close read, or routinely in specific components of the grades 3 through 5 all block. To learn more about all block, reference page 525 of the appendix. Language dives in all block include 3 components: deconstruct, reconstruct, and practice. These can be switched up in order. As part of this inquiry-based process, students acquire academic language through analysis, conversation, and usage, appreciating the time provided to just focus on one sentence. EL also gives teachers another support, an anchor chart for creating your own language dives if you want to extend beyond ELA to science, math, history, and social studies texts. Again, we see an all-block rotation schedule. Again, students will work with 5 components over 2 weeks, but only 3 components each week. Remember the catch and release model. Independent reading happens each and every day. When not with the teacher, students decide how to spend the next 2 20-minute rotations. The next slide is an important slide. There are sample calendars in your teacher manuals before each all block unit. These are incredibly helpful when seeing how modules and all block talk to one another. You'll notice that flex days typically fall on assessment days, as assessments may take longer in modules. However, there is flexibility when moving these flex days to meet the needs of your class. You'll also see and notice that when you're unpacking a module assessment, if you're living in the module world, you think, and you have not looked at any all block materials, you get under the impression that modules, some of the things on the assessments are only taught in modules or are only seen in homework in the modules. This is not true. Some of the module assessment work is done in the all block. Because we know that we don't live in a 20-minute perfect world, I know that some people, and I've heard that people have cut components of all block. This is when looking between the demands of modules and what is given in all block are essential. You need to know how they're speaking to one another. You'll also want to check for asterisks, double asterisks, in the all block sample calendars, so you know when you can begin the work. A lot of times, students need module work before they begin some of the all block work. In the next set of slides, you'll see all the lessons in grade 3, module 4 of all block. The link is a copy of 8.5 by 11, so you can see the font better and take them back to your school for use. As you look through these, you'll want to jot and discuss the patterns you see. I also want to share that some teachers use the next set of slides as a rubric or a student choice board for an accountability piece in all block to monitor and maintain all block standards. Another tip if creating these is you'll notice the page numbers, both for students in their manual and for teachers in their manual. The student page numbers are in blue and the teacher page numbers are in red. This is really helpful when organizing your materials. For the next couple slides, you're going to want to take about 15 to 20 minutes and start asking yourself, how is the teacher-guided component and the independent student work component for the next day speaking to each other? You'll want to hold discussions about the level of the verbs and the rigor of what the teacher is doing versus the student. And you'll want to notice patterns, how they catch and release one another. While you're doing this work for the next 20 minutes or so, you're also going to want to look into independent reading. While we have independent reading each and every day, it does change. You're going to want to notice the scaffolds of what students are doing and what they're expected to do. Again, you'll continue to do this work, noticing the patterns and the catch and release of rigor. But you also want to notice another piece. Whenever you see a teacher-guided word study or vocabulary, please be sure to note that if you are doing a modified all block, there is a piece in here in which EL confirms that it's okay to do Reading Foundation Skills Block program. And again, talk about the independent reading. Now is a good time to pause. Okay. When planning for all block and looking at assessment data from the modules, it's really helpful to have the all block template laid out. Here's a planning tool that is color-coded so that teachers and staff members can see how the patterns are working together. When you're new to all block, sometimes it's hard to know when to group students or how to group students. Before each unit, EL gives you a Unit 1 overview, and they give you suggestions about how to group your students prior to your all block rotations. Here's an example of a classroom tool. Students know the icons and may choose at times what to do, but must meet with the teacher at certain times. I would also add page numbers to this to streamline confusion or down on transition time. Please remember that these are not 4 static levels. Rather, at the start of every 2 weeks, the teacher plans students' levels for the teacher-guided activities based on student needs and on formative teacher, peer, or self-assessment. So while you might be a Bill 1 week, you may be a Panther the next week. Another question that's given frequently is, are there formal assessments in the all block? The answer is no, but there are rubrics in the back of your appendix. Also remember that if a student is struggling with a concept or item in your modules, you can use that data to adjust and differentiate their group and all block. Again, the groupings are not 4 static levels. And that is the end of our presentation today.